Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Greg Palmer had always believed he knew his wife better than anyone else. At 56, after 28 years of marriage, he thought there were no more surprises between them. Vanessa, 54, was the woman he'd chosen to build a life with, the mother of his daughter, the person with whom he shared every major decision. Greg worked as an operations manager at a large logistics company in Nashville, Tennessee, and had always prided himself on being a devoted husband. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. He paid the bills, took care of the house, planned for the future. Vanessa, for her part, had left her job years earlier to raise their daughter, and now that the girl was away at college in another state, she had free time. That's when she started attending that book club. At first, Greg thought it was a great idea. Vanessa needed something to occupy her mind, to socialize, to make friends. She'd always loved reading, so it made sense. Every Thursday night around 7, Vanessa would leave the house dressed up, a book under her arm and an eager smile on her face. She'd come back late, around 11 or midnight, always vague about the details. When Greg asked how it went, she'd give generic answers like, "It was good, we discussed the chapters," or "I met some interesting people." Never names. Never specific stories. Greg, confident and busy with his own work, didn't press further. After all, why would he suspect anything? But in the past 2 months, something changed. Vanessa started spending more time on her phone, always keeping the screen face down. She'd laugh to herself while reading messages. Whenever Greg came near, she'd quickly close the app. She'd ask if he was working late, if he had any trips scheduled, as if she were mapping out his schedule. Greg noticed, but didn't want to seem controlling. He fought against the nagging voice in his head telling him something was wrong, until that Thursday. Greg was at the office, finishing up operational reports due Friday morning. It was almost 10 at night when he wrapped up. He was exhausted and hungry. He decided to stop by an Italian restaurant just a few blocks away, a quiet place he and Vanessa used to frequent years ago. When he walked in, the atmosphere was calm, with only a few tables occupied. Greg asked for a table and, while waiting for the waiter, glanced around absent-mindedly. That's when his heart stopped. There, at a table in the back, nearly hidden behind a decorative screen, was Vanessa. But she wasn't alone. Next to her, very close, sat a younger man, probably in his 40s. They were laughing, their hands intertwined on the table. Vanessa had that bright look in her eyes Greg hadn't seen in years. The man leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick, casual kiss. It was long, intimate, passionate. And Vanessa kissed him back without hesitation. Greg felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. For a moment, he stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Then instinct took over. Without thinking much, he pulled out his phone, turned on the camera, and started recording. His hand trembled, but he kept it steady. He captured the kiss, the intimacy, the laughter. Then, without making a sound, he left the restaurant before either Vanessa or the man saw him. In the car, Greg sat in the dark, taking deep breaths, trying to control the rage and pain exploding inside him. 28 years. 28 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together. And there she was, kissing another man, laughing as if none of it meant anything. Greg wasn't going home. Not yet. He needed to know more. He needed concrete proof. He parked his car in a discreet spot with a clear view of the restaurant's entrance and waited. Half an hour later, Vanessa and the man came out together. She was clinging to him, her head resting on his shoulder. They got into his car, a sleek, modern black sedan. Greg started his own car and followed them, keeping a safe distance. They didn't go far. Just a few blocks away, they pulled up in front of a mid-range hotel. Greg parked across the street and watched. Vanessa and the man walked in together, unhurried, without any attempt to hide. Greg took photos. Lots of them, the hotel's facade, the car's license plate, the two of them entering. Then he waited. He sat there in the car for over an hour, his mind spinning in circles. He couldn't believe it. But the evidence was all there, right on his phone screen. When Vanessa finally left the hotel alone, it was almost midnight. She took a taxi and drove off. Greg filmed it all. Then he went home too, but didn't go inside. He slept in the car, in the garage, because he couldn't bear being in the same space as her at that moment. He stayed awake all night, replaying the photos and videos, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and a cold clarity he hadn't expected. At dawn, Greg made a decision. He wasn't going to wait. He wasn't going to drag out the agony. He wasn't going to gather more evidence. He already had everything he needed. It was time to act. Friday morning, Greg called work and took the day off. Then he looked up the contact for a divorce attorney a colleague had recommended years ago and scheduled an emergency appointment for 9 a.m. In the lawyer's office, Greg showed everything, the videos, the photos, and explained the situation. The attorney, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, carefully reviewed the material. "This is sufficient proof of adultery," he said. "We can use this in the proceedings. But you should understand that, depending on the state and the circumstances, it may or may not affect the division of assets. Tennessee recognizes adultery as a factor, but every case is different." Greg wasn't interested in technical details right then. He just wanted it over. "I want a divorce. I want it fast. What do I need to do?" The lawyer suggested gathering more evidence, maybe hiring a private investigator, building a stronger case. Greg shook his head. "No. I'm going to settle this today." The lawyer tried to advise caution, but Greg was determined. He signed the preliminary documents, authorized the attorney to prepare the divorce papers, and left with a clear plan in mind. Back at home, Greg got everything in order. He separated bank accounts, canceled shared credit cards, changed passwords. Then he sat down at his computer and recorded a video. Looking straight into the camera, his voice calm but heavy with emotion, he recounted everything he'd discovered. He showed the photos, the videos, explained how he felt, how he'd been betrayed. "You're seeing this because you deserve to know the truth. I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing it because I won't live a lie anymore." He saved the video as private and sent the link only to trusted people, his siblings, his parents, a few close friends, and his daughter. Then he printed the divorce papers the lawyer had emailed him, organized printed copies of the photos, and waited. Vanessa came home around 3 in the afternoon. She was in a good mood, humming a tune as she walked in. Greg was sitting in the living room, in his usual armchair, with the photos spread out on the coffee table in front of him. When Vanessa saw him, she stopped in the doorway, confused. "Greg? You didn't go to work today?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, as if seeing a stranger. "Sit down, Vanessa." She frowned. "What's going on?" "Sit," he repeated, firmer this time. Still confused, Vanessa walked over to the couch and sat down, her eyes drifting to the photos on the table. That's when she saw them, herself kissing another man, walking into a hotel. All the color drained from her face. "Greg, I can explain," he raised his hand, silencing her. "No. You can't. There's no explanation that changes what I saw, Vanessa. Last night, I was heading home from work and decided to grab dinner at that Italian place we used to go to. Guess who I ran into? You. With him." Vanessa tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked at the photos, then at Greg, as if searching for an escape, a plausible excuse. "Greg, please, it's not what you think. He's just a friend." A friend?" Greg interrupted, his voice rising. "Do you kiss your friends like that? Do you go to hotels with your friends? Vanessa started trembling. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness. I was confused, feeling lonely. Greg almost laughed, but it was a bitter, humorless laugh. You were lonely? I was always here, Vanessa. Always. Working, providing, taking care of you, our daughter, our family. And you felt lonely? He stood up, grabbed his phone, and played an audio clip. Vanessa froze as she heard her own voice, recorded the previous night when she'd been on the phone in the lounge area of the tennis club. I can leave him anytime. He's just a wallet I haven't emptied yet. As soon as he sells the company, I'll get half of everything, and we can finally live the way we've always wanted, Charles. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was pale, eyes wide, completely exposed. Greg turned off the audio and looked at her with an expression mixing pain and contempt. A wallet. That's all I was to you. 28 years, Vanessa. 28 years of my life dedicated to you, and I was just a wallet you hadn't emptied yet. Vanessa began to cry, sobbing loudly, trying to stand and move toward him, but Greg stepped back. Don't touch me. Greg, please, forgive me. It was a terrible mistake. I don't know what came over me. I love you, I swear I love you. He shook his head, his eyes glistening with held-back tears. No. You don't love me. Maybe you never did. And you know what's worse? I believed in you. I trusted you completely. And you used that against me. Greg picked up the folder with the divorce papers and tossed it onto her lap. This is the end, Vanessa. I've already filed for divorce. You have 24 hours to leave this house. Pack your things and go live with Charles, since he's the future you always wanted. Vanessa stared at the papers, incredulous. You can't do this. I have rights. Half of everything is mine. Greg smiled, but it was a cold smile. Rights? You gave up your rights when you planned to use me like a wallet. And as for the house and the money, you'll find out it's not as simple as you thought. He picked up his phone again and showed her the video he'd recorded. This is already with our daughter, my siblings, my parents, and yours too. Everyone knows who you really are. If you try to complicate this divorce, if you try to extort me or play any dirty games, I'll make this public. I'll post it online, send it to everyone in your contacts, to the tennis club, wherever you want. You'll be known as the woman who cheated on her husband and called him a wallet. Vanessa completely broke down, collapsing to her knees on the floor, begging between sobs. Greg, please, don't do this. I'll change. I'll end things with him. We can start over. But Greg was past that point. The hurt ran too deep, the betrayal was irreparable. There's no starting over, Vanessa. There's only the end. You killed what we had. And now you'll have to deal with the consequences. He left the room, leaving her there, crying on the floor, clutching the divorce papers. Greg went to the guest bedroom, locked the door, and for the first time in 24 hours, allowed himself to cry, not for her, but for everything he'd believed they had, which had never truly existed. In the hours that followed, Vanessa tried everything. She knocked on the bedroom door, pleaded, sent texts, called. Greg didn't respond. She tried talking to their daughter, but the girl, after watching the video her father had sent, was shocked and furious. How could you do this to him, Mom? How could you betray Dad like that? She hung up and blocked Vanessa. Her parents, when they found out, were ashamed and disappointed. Vanessa's mother called Greg, apologizing on her daughter's behalf, saying she couldn't understand how Vanessa had become that person. Vanessa was alone. The next morning, Saturday, Vanessa packed her bags and left the house. She tried calling Charles, her lover, but he didn't answer. She sent messages. Nothing. She went to his house, but he wouldn't open the door. Finally, he replied by text, "Vanessa, this was a mistake. I can't get involved in this. Sorry." He blocked her right after. Charles, realizing there'd be no easy money, that Vanessa wouldn't bring him half a fortune as she'd promised, simply disappeared. He'd never been truly interested in her. Only in the fantasy of a comfortable life she'd sold him. Once he saw it was all a lie, he ran. Vanessa moved into a small apartment she rented with the little money she had in her personal account. The divorce process was swift and brutal. Greg's attorney, armed with evidence of adultery and the audio recording where Vanessa admitted to planning to financially exploit her husband, secured a very favorable settlement for Greg. Vanessa tried to claim half the assets, but the audio worked heavily against her. In Tennessee, while adultery alone doesn't prevent asset division, clear evidence of bad faith, premeditated marital fraud, and intentional financial exploitation were decisive factors. The judge ruled that Vanessa had acted dishonestly and calculatingly, and that influenced the division. She received far less than she'd expected, only the legal minimum, accounting for the years of marriage but also her conduct. The house stayed with Greg. Part of the retirement funds was divided, but Vanessa couldn't access the accounts Greg had protected before the proceedings began. She tried hiring better lawyers, but had no money. She asked her parents for help, but they, still hurt by the shame she'd brought on the family, refused to fund a lost legal battle. Vanessa, without her husband, without her lover, without the money she'd so carefully planned to obtain, had to face the reality of a life she'd destroyed herself. She got a job at a department store, something she never imagined doing again after so many years out of the workforce. The pay was low, barely enough to cover rent and basic expenses. She lived alone in a cramped apartment, working double shifts just to get by. Greg, on the other hand, began rebuilding his life. The first few months were hard. The pain of betrayal didn't vanish overnight. He went to therapy, talked with friends, traveled a bit. He sold the house, it held too many memories, and bought a modern apartment downtown in Nashville, smaller but comfortable, a real fresh start. His daughter, Olivia, who'd been shocked and furious with her mother, grew even closer to her father. She visited him whenever she came home from college, and the two rebuilt an even stronger bond. Greg even started dating again, cautiously, without rushing. He met a few women but wasn't looking for anything serious yet. He just wanted to live honestly, without lies or masks. A year and a half after discovering the affair, Greg was at a cafe near work when he ran into an old acquaintance, a woman named Rachel who'd worked at the same company years before. They started talking, and Greg learned she was also divorced and had been through a similar situation. They began seeing each other slowly, building something based on honesty and mutual respect. Greg realized not everyone was like Vanessa, that honest people still existed in the world. Rachel didn't see him as a wallet. She saw him as a good, hard-working man who deserved to be valued. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept struggling alone. She lost contact with her daughter, who refused to speak to her. She lost her friends, who sided with Greg. She lost her status, her comfort, the life she'd had. Months later, she tried reaching out to Charles again, but he was already with someone else and treated her with indifference. Vanessa finally understood the weight of her own choices. She'd traded 28 years of a solid marriage, of a devoted man, for an empty fantasy. And now, she paid the price every single day. Greg never sought out Vanessa after the divorce. He didn't feel hatred, nor did he take pleasure in her suffering. Just a deep indifference. He moved on, focusing on himself, his daughter, and the new relationships he built with honesty. And over time, he realized the best revenge wasn't destroying her, it was simply living well. Living with dignity. Living without lies. He learned that trust, once broken, never fully recovers. But he also learned it's possible to rebuild your life, even after being betrayed so cruelly. Greg emerged from it stronger, wiser, and finally free of a woman who never valued him. And in the end, that was enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.